Welcome back to another video in the A320 Type Rating series, presented to you by the AutoPilots. In today's lesson, we are looking at the theory behind the engine stall. Following this, we will do a practical demonstration of an engine low oil pressure scenario, including the management of the failure, aviate, navigate, communicate, interaction with cabin crew, and a localizer-only approach. To skip straight to the practical, head to this timestamp. There is lots packed in this lesson, so let's jump right in. Welcome to this theory part of the engine stall. This lesson will cover what is an engine stall, causes and symptoms, the role of the FADEC, the flows and actions for the crew, the ECAM or QRH procedure, engine management, and decision making. So, what is an engine stall? An engine stalls when the airflow in the engine is disrupted. The compressor blades are no longer able to send the air from the front of the engine to the rear of the engine. As a result, the flow of air reverses, with high pressure moving from the end of the compressor exiting at the front of the engine, causing a large loss of thrust. Now let's have a look at the causes and symptoms of an engine stall. An engine can stall because of ingestion of foreign objects, engine degradation due to high wear, ice, disturbance of the airflow, from wake turbulence. Signs of an engine stall may be loud, repetitive bangs, N1 or other thrust indications fluctuating, e.g. T increase, vibrations, a yaw motion from loss of thrust, or a passenger's report of fire from tailpipe. The FADEC will attempt to recover the engine stall without the pilots taking action. It regulates the airflow through the compressor to prevent a stall from occurring. If a stall does happen, then the ECAM, engine 1 or 2 stall is triggered. However, sometimes it may not always be detected, in which case, the pilots must recognize the symptoms and call for the QRH engine stall procedure. Like always, when this happens, the first thing we do is aviate, navigate, communicate. If this has happened just after takeoff, then we must prioritize the normal takeoff SOPs. Aviate. Ensure the aircraft is getting safely airborne. Use the automatics to manage the workload. Are we focusing on our pitch? Do we have a beta target we need to center? How is our speed looking? Navigate. Is there any terrain that needs to be avoided immediately? What altitude are you going to climb to for troubleshooting? Is there any weather about? And communicate. Inform ATC that you will need to level off. Make the PA, attention crew at stations. Following, aviate, navigate, communicate. We can then begin the ECAM, or the QRH checklist, which is as follows. The first thing you do is move the thrust lever, affected engine, to idle. Then check the engine parameters. If abnormal engine parameters, or if the engine continues to stall, then you will need to shut down then affected engine. If the engine parameters are normal once the thrust lever is moved to idle, then this could be an icing issue. Turn on the anti-ice, and gradually move the thrust lever forward. If the engine begins stalling again at a particular thrust setting, then move the thrust lever backwards until the stalling stops. If stall does not reoccur, then you can continue normal operation. Let's have a look at the engine management. The first thing flight crew need to do is reduce the engine thrust. This reduces the differential pressure across the compressor, stabilizing the engine airflow. Where it says, if abnormal engine parameters, here, crew will check parameters on the engine warning display, including the N1, N2 and EGT. Open up the ECAM engine page and check for vibrations. If the fluctuations or abnormal engine parameters continue, or if the symptoms remain at idle thrust, then the engine should be shut down. So do you need to shut down the engine? If you have a situation where the engine only starts to stall above a particular thrust setting, the engine doesn't necessarily need to be shut down. Crew should manually set the thrust setting to below the point of stall, provided other indications are normal. Following this, you can fly with reduced power, not ideal, but it's better than having no power at all. Once the ECAM is complete, it is best to run a DODAR or a FADEC. In this case, we shall assume that the engine is damaged and shut down by crew. D. We diagnose the engine stall situation, shut down the engine as per the QRH. O. Do you continue, divert, or return? What are the nearest airports? What is the weather and runway state like? D. Decide. Use all available resources, and this is a conversation that should happen between both crew. A. Assign roles including speaking to ATC, crew and passengers. Set up the MCDU, carry out performance calculations and conduct a briefing. Who is PF and PM? R. Review. This can be done at a later stage. Are you happy with the plan? This scenario can definitely show some gaps in competencies, so before we jump to the practical, let's have a look at where crew go wrong when dealing with this failure. The pilots are rushing. This isn't necessarily a stressful, time-critical situation, provided that there is no fire, smoke coming from the engine. Obviously, if the engine is damaged, it needs to be shut down, and it is better to get on the ground sooner, but don't rush. ECAM. You can get so distracted by the ECAM that you end up losing control of the aircraft. Prioritize flying the aircraft at all times. Comms. Communication can break down not just between the crew, but also with cabin crew, passengers and ATC. Make sure you communicate clearly, as all parties will want to know what's going on. We cannot perform an engine stall on the Phoenix simulator, so instead we will show you the engine 1 low oil pressure alert. The failure ultimately leads to the shutting down of the engine, but notice how the crew prioritize the safe flying of the aircraft first. The ECAM for this failure is as follows. If oil pressure is below 13 psi, thrust lever 1, off. Engine master 1, idle. This then triggers the engine 1 shutdown ECAM, which has a few ECAM actions such as setting the engine mode selector to ignition, and TCAS to TA.
Takeoff. Man flex 67, SRS, runway.
Checked. Thrust set. .100 knots.
Checked.
B1. Rotate. Positive climb.
Gear up.
Gear up.
Nav. AP1.
Checked.
Thrust climb, climb.
Checked.
Flaps 0.
Speed checked. Flaps 0.
.220 selected.
Checked. Master warning.
Okay, all the automatics remain, as does the flight guidance. We can continue with the SID for now as it keeps us clear of weather and terrain, but may need to hold soon. Let's tell ATC we want to level off at 6,000 feet.
Airbus 123, we have an engine issue and request to level off at 6,000 feet. Stand by for further intentions.
Read ECAM.
Engine 1, oil low pressure. This is confirmed on the SD page. The oil pressure is 10 psi.
That's checked. Out star. My radios, ECAM actions.
If oil pressure less than 13 psi, which it is, thrust lever 1, idle.
Confirmed thrust lever 1.
Confirmed.
Idle.
Engine master 1, off. Confirm engine master 1.
Confirmed.
Off.
Setting MCT. Anti-ice on. Before we start the next ECAM, let's enter a hold. Can you request a hold at NIDM?
Pan. Airbus 123, we have an engine issue and shut down the engine. Request to hold at NIDM. Stand by for further intentions. Hold at NIDM is inserted.
Okay. Now we can continue with the ECAM. Read ECAM.
Engine 1 shut down. This is to be expected, and confirmed on the engine warning display, and the engine master switch is off.
Checked. My radios, ECAM actions.
Engine mode selector, ignition. If no fuel leak, imbalance, monitor. TCAS, TA. Clear engine 1.
Clear.
Secondaries, the bleed page shows that Pack 1 is inoperative. Pack 2 is still working, and receiving bleed air as normal. Clear bleed.
Clear.
ELEC. The ELEC page shows that AC bus 1 is being supplied by Gen 2. We could start the APU?
I agree.
Okay. Starting APU. Clear ELEC.
Clear.
Status.
Stop ECAM. There are no resets, no expanded checklists. Read status.
If performance permits, cross bleed, open. We are not going to do that as the engine could be damaged.
I agree.
One pack only if wing anti-ice on. Cat 3 single only. Inop systems are Cat 3 dual, engine 1 bleed, pack 1, main galley, and generator 1. Remove status.
Remove status.
Status removed. ECAM actions complete.
That's understood. The main galley will come back on when the APU has started.
I agree.
Okay, we will shortly be entering the hold. So let's begin a DODA. D. We had an engine 1 low oil pressure, and as a result we have shut down the engine. O. Our options are continue, divert or return. We have Oslo just behind us. We know the weather is Cat 1 with light winds. There is Sandefjord Airport as well, if we need it. Decide. What are your thoughts?
I think returning to Oslo is our best option. It is safe, and commercially preferred as well.
I agree, so let's return to Oslo. Assign. I will speak to ATC, the cabin crew and passengers. I will also inform the company via ACAS. Could you set up the MCDU, then we will brief. We can do a review later on, to see if there is anything we may have missed. Are you happy with the plan?
Yes. Happy with the plan.
You have control.
I have control.
Pan Airbus 123, we have shut down one engine. Our intentions are to return to Oslo. We are requesting the ILS approach for runway 01 left. Ready for the approach in approximately 10 minutes. Okay. I am going to speak to the cabin manager on the phone. Senior cabin manager to the interphone, please.
Hi, this is Jenny speaking.
Hi Jenny, it's Rob from the flight deck. I've got a NITS brief to give you. Are you ready to receive it?
Okay, I've got a pen and paper, ready.
So the nature of the issue is an engine malfunction. As a result, we have had to shut down the engine. Intentions are to return to Oslo. Time-wise, this will take about 15 minutes until landing. There are no special instructions for you. Is that all understood? And can you read that back for me, please?
So there has been an engine issue, and you have shut it down. Intentions are to return to Oslo, landing in 15 minutes. Normal landing and taxi back to stand.
That's correct. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, I have spoken to the cabin crew, ATC, the company, and done a PA to the passengers. I have seen that you have set up the MCDU. Are you ready for a brief?
Ready.
So we are going to be doing a localizer approach for runway 01 left, single engine. What would you make the threats for today?
We don't usually fly a localizer approach, so it would be good to discuss this in more detail. Our workload will be increased with the management of flying single engine.
I agree. To mitigate this, I will discuss the how part of the approach, so we are sharing the same mental model. The fact that we are single engine, with land as SAP in amber, poses the threat of rushing. We must be efficient, but it's important we don't rush. MSA is 4,000 feet. There are 2 runways, parallel operations, so traffic may be a threat. We have TA only on TCAS, so I will make sure my rate of descent is appropriate. So, for the localizer approach for 01 left, the inbound course is 012. What would you make the minimums for this approach?
860 feet.
I agree. We intercept the vertical profile at 10.4 miles out. I will fly this decelerated, but conservative. I don't want to demand too much thrust from one engine by flying a stabilized approach. For this approach, do you expect me to use vertical speed or track FPA?
Track FPA.
Correct. I will use track FPA. 1 mile before the descent point, I will pre-select 3 degrees down, but I will not pull the knob. 0.3 miles before, I will then pull for -3 degrees. We then have check altitudes, which I will ask you to read out and cross-check. The glide slope is considered unreliable, so we must not get drawn into that. If we need to go around, it is straight ahead, climb 5,000 feet. Auto brake is low. Once we land, vacate Alpha 7, taxi back to apron. Do you have any questions?
Negative. That all sounds good to me.
Approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Baro ref.
1005 set.
Seat belts.
On.
Minimum.
860 set.
Auto brake.
Low.
EFB.
Stowed, connected. Lock blue.
Checked.
Flaps 2.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
Speed 160 knots selected.
Checked.
Lock star.
Checked.
Speed managed.
Checked.
FPA-3.
Checked.
Gear down.
Speed checked. Gear down. Profile checks. At 9 miles, we should be at 3,550 feet. 40 feet below profile.
FPA 2.7 set.
Checked.
Flaps 3.
Speed checked. Flaps 3. At 7 miles, we should be at 2,910 feet. On profile. At 5 miles, We should be at 2,260 feet. 40 feet above profile.
FPA 3.5 set.
Checked.
Landing checklist.
Cabin.
Secured for landing.
Go around altitude.
4,000 feet set.
ECAM memo.
Landing no blue.
Landing checklist complete. 4 miles, 1950. On profile. Three miles, 1620. 30 feet below profile.
1,000.
1,000 feet.
Checked. Autopilot coming off. Flight directors off. Auto thrust speed.
500.
500 feet. Stable.
Checked.
100 above. Minimum. $100. 50, 40, 30, 20. Retard. 5.
Spoilers. Reverse green. D-cell. $70 knots.
Checked. Manual braking.